The new college football playoff rankings just dropped, and once again, everyone is mad. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to re rank the teams how I would if it was just up to me. And first off, I want to say that this is really done. I'm trying to not necessarily disregard previous weeks, but disregard previous polls as much as possible. I want to avoid poll inertia where because a team has been at the top, they have to stay at the top, and that kind of perceived stuck in the mud nature you can get with some of these rankings sometimes. So we're throwing all the previous rankings out as far as previous weeks of college football playoff. We're just looking at records, who everyone's played, and how I think they all shake out. So with that said, let's get right into it. We're going to start at 12, go up to 1, and number 12 for me is Arizona State. I think this is the best team in the Big 12. Big 12 is weak this year, and while there's a lot of infighting, there's a lot of solid teams, I don't think there's a truly great team in this conference. I think Kenny Dillingham has done an incredible job with Arizona State, turning them around from where they were picked to finish last. Love Cam Scatterbo. Sam Levitt's playing great as well, but I still think this is a number 12 seeded team, but I do have them actually ranked 12th in the nation as well. Number 11 for me is Miami. They have the two losses, one to Syracuse, one to Georgia Tech, and I think even with two losses, this is still a good team. And a team with only two losses, I don't think you can just disregard. Playing in the ACC, Georgia Tech has been missing Haynes King for a lot of the season, so their record isn't quite what it could be, I don't think. And then you look at what Georgia Tech with Haynes King has done this year. You look at what they did versus Georgia. That's a solid team that beat Miami. That's in Atlanta as well. And then they lost to Syracuse up in Syracuse. That's a solid team. They're ranked right now as well. So when you have losses to two decent teams, I still think you deserve to be in the playoff conversation. I have them in at 11. Number 10 for me is the Tennessee Volunteers. The loss to Arkansas really knocks them down, in my opinion. Georgia loss, I think you can get away with if it's your only one, but the Arkansas loss is just bad. Arkansas is a middle of the road, maybe slightly below SEC team, and it's not a good loss to have on the resume. So Tennessee, they are in the back half of this. They stay down at number 10. Number 9 for me, Ohio State. I think that the losses that Ohio State has are marginally better than the ones that Tennessee has. I think Oregon is a better team than Georgia, and I think Michigan would beat Arkansas. I think Michigan is a better team than Arkansas is, and then rivalry game as well. But still, two-loss teams, so I'm keeping Ohio State just ahead. Still, I think they're a very good team, and I think they definitely deserve to be in, but they do not get a home playoff game. At number 8, and the 4 seed, the lowest rated of these bye teams, is going to be Boise State for me. They only have one loss, it's to Oregon. I know the strength of schedule isn't amazing, but you can only beat who you play, and Boise State took Oregon down to the wire in a very similar way that Ohio State did. Not quite the same miscues at the end of that, but Boise had Oregon on the ropes for a lot of that game. I think people forget that. This is a very, very good Boise State team, so they are number 8 for me, and the 4 seed. Number 7 and my 3 seed is SMU. They have one loss. It's to a ranked BYU team who is top 3 in the Big 12, top 4 up in that group that had a chance to make the conference championship game. This is a good team. Kevin Jennings is a great player for SMU. They've had a couple struggle games. You look at the Duke game, they needed a miracle to win that, and that's why they're a bit lower than some of the other one-loss teams on this list for me, but still, I think they are a great team and deserve a playoff spot for sure. So 3 seed, number 7, SMU. Then number 6 is Georgia. Georgia would be the lowest team getting a home playoff game in this format, and the highest two-loss team in this ranking. And the fact is, those losses are to good teams. You look at who Georgia's lost to. Ole Miss, solid team. Alabama, solid team. Those are two top 15 squads, in my opinion, and they lost to Alabama really close. That was in Bryant-Denny Stadium as well, and then they lost at Ole Miss. So 2 away losses to 2 top 15 teams. I think that warrants putting them above SMU because SMU has struggled so much with some of these other ACC teams. So give me Georgia just over SMU. Number 5 is Notre Dame. Notre Dame would be number 3 for me in a heartbeat if they did not have the loss to Northern Illinois. I think if they lose to much of the other teams on their schedule, they go number 3, maybe even number 2, depending on who the loss is to. But Northern Illinois is terrible. That is a bottom third MAC team that is just an inexcusably bad loss. So even though they've blown out a lot of who else they've played other than a couple struggles, I think Notre Dame has to stay at number 5 for me. Number 4 and 3 are Penn State and Indiana. And I know people are going to say, how on earth can you have Indiana at 3? They've played no one. They got blown out by Ohio State. Penn State has also played no one. Penn State has struggled. You look at the Wisconsin game, they struggled with Wisconsin a lot in that game. Also struggled with USC a lot, almost lost to Minnesota. There are a lot of teams that Penn State has really struggled with this year. Indiana has not had that issue outside of Michigan. They have blown the doors off of most of the teams that they have played. So when you look at two one-loss teams who lost to the same team, I realize Indiana lost worse, but that was at Ohio State. That was in Columbus. Penn State got Ohio State in Happy Valley. That makes a difference. So in my opinion, I think Indiana deserves to be ranked over Penn State. I have them at 3, Penn State at 4. Number 2 and the 2 seed is Texas. The Longhorns finished 11-1. The only loss is to, in this scenario, number 6 Georgia. They deserve that number 2 spot. And then Oregon is the only undefeated team. They are leading the Big Ten right now going into the conference championship game. Obviously, they deserve to be number 1. So how your playoff bracket would look, you would have number 3 Indiana hosting number 12 Arizona State, or 5 seed. We'll go by seeds now, make it a little bit easier to understand. 5 seed Indiana would host 12 seed Arizona State. I think that's a fun game. 6 seed Penn State would host 11 seed Miami. I think that would be a super fun game, contrasting styles. You look at the air it out offense of Miami versus Penn State's stingy defense. Could Miami contain Tyler Warren for Penn State? I kind of doubt it. 7 seed Notre Dame would be hosting 10 seed Tennessee, and that's another fun game. This Notre Dame defense versus the Tennessee rushing attack and Dylan Sampson. Tennessee stout run defense versus Jeremiah Love. That's going to be a good ground and pound game. And then number 8 seed Georgia would be hosting 9 seed Ohio State, and that would be an incredible game. I think everyone would want to sign up to watch that. Your first round byes would be to Oregon, Texas, SMU, and Boise State. I think those are deserving teams if they win their conference championship games. Obviously, those are still left to go, but we'll see what happens. My first 3 out, just in case you were curious, are Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina in that order. They are all 9-3 teams. Both Alabama and Ole Miss have wins over South Carolina, so I have to put them above South Carolina. I think there's a little bit of recency bias with the Gamecocks. They beat Clemson. I know it's a great win, but if you're looking at the body of the schedule as a whole, when you have 3 teams with identical records and 2 of them have a win over another one, I think you have to put South Carolina bottom of those 3 because of that. Alabama is ahead of Ole Miss because the Kentucky loss is the worst loss of any of these teams, and if Ole Miss did not have the head-to-head win over South Carolina, they would be below the Gamecocks because of that Kentucky loss. But Alabama at 13, Ole Miss at 14, South Carolina at 15. But what do you guys think of this bracket? Would you want to watch these games? How do you think I did compared to the playoff committee? Is there anything you think I've got horribly wrong? Knowing social media and comments, probably a lot of you think I've got something horribly wrong, but excited to hear it, so let me know.